So here are some ideas to inspire a digitally enabled city. And these are examples that we've found from around the world, in fact, of how other cities, towns, places are trying to become more digitally enabled. So smart benches are something that started popping up around London. These, I think, are a really kind of interesting way of giving people free access, which obviously is one of the barriers we've talked about. At the moment, there's around 30 of these in London. They're solar panelled. They give people free Wi-Fi access. They're also providing wired and wireless charging points, so people can top up their devices as they're passing sat on the bench. They include air and environment quality measuring apparatus, so people can actually sit down, log onto the Wi-Fi on the bench, and they can find out about the environment they're sitting in terms of air pollution and other things. Obviously, they're a great place for people to start up conversations and have a chat. It's not just about staring at your phone screen while you're there. As I say, there's about 30 of these in London. Some of them have got contactless payment points, so you can donate to charities. You may have seen that's something we've actually got a standalone point doing that in Wolverhampton now, but I think it's an interesting, interesting way. It could be that you had the option to donate to a charity doing digital work from one of these smart benches. And in terms of how they're funded, a lot of the money raised by the manufacturers was crowdfunded for this, and they have started branding them now and doing sponsorship deals. So if you see them in and around London, whenever you visit, you may notice that there's different corporate partners are getting behind these. So Mike's just touched on housing associations, but again, there's been quite a lot of housing associations, particularly around the UK, who have got behind free internet access schemes. Glasgow Housing Association recently gave 70 tenants of a tower block 2 years free Wi-Fi. And in the first year after that, the figures in terms of people's online activity really went through the roof. It increased people's ability to apply for jobs and indeed get jobs. They were able to save money on their monthly bills because they had better access to things like price comparison sites. Kids were able to get online and study a lot easier, and people generally saved money across the board. They were also able to access the housing association's online services themselves. Similarly in Wolverhampton, Wolverhampton Homes have had a real push to kind of get people to use their online services. And if people aren't online, they can't do that. So putting that Wi-Fi in buildings and in properties can really help in terms of people's access and then their ability to, online really. Excuse me, I'm just letting someone into the room that's just arrived. Digital health hubs. So this was an initiative in Leeds. Leeds are currently have a 100% digital inclusive agenda. So they've been doing lots of interesting stuff, and this one around health was particularly interesting. Obviously, there's an increasing dependence on patients being able to use technology to get the best out of the NHS these days. That's been sped up by COVID. So the digital health hub allows residents to receive support. It helps them learn how to book their GP appointments online, how they can get prescriptions online, and use the vast array of NHS online apps and websites. And there's a referral pathway within Leeds now so that people can be referred to the digital health hub in order to get online and make the most of NHS services. This is a bit further afield, a bit further than Leeds. Humanity, bit of a pun there, are based in Greendale, California. And they're a non-profit who provide people who are on low incomes with a mixture of things, about all the things we're talking about today: technology in terms of equipment, internet in terms of connectivity, and then also digital training. They've done a lot of work recycling e-waste, literally, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tons of computers, tablets, phones, screens, routers, whatever they might be, get thrown away. And 70% of e-waste is toxic, so it's pretty high in terms of the environmental damage it does. So they're repurposing this equipment, and they've got a number of projects that they run so that the equipment is repurposed. They link up non-profits and government agencies to expand digital inclusion. They provide advice and guidance on affordable contract-free internet connectivity, because again, the 12 months contracts can sometimes be the thing that's a bit of a deal breaker for people to get signed up. So that's another thing that they're really good at doing. Students from low-income families can receive donated technology, free or cheap broadband, and free training. And they basically getting out equipment to the people that most need it, and connectivity to the people that most need it. This grew from a really small operation. It was a 2-person operation running out somebody's garage. They've now got several warehouses full of equipment, teams of people. So a scheme like that can really grow, and it clearly shows that there's a need. And I don't think that's unique to where they are. So talking about devices and equipment, we've been doing some work with the Support to Connect projects here in Wolverhampton with WVSC's social prescribing. And we've been looking into how we get equipment to people. And Heather's touched upon the device lending scheme that the council are beginning to roll out and pilot. This issue of getting devices to people, there are lots of ways to approach it. So yes, some of it is purely a cash, you need to buy equipment to get it to people. But there is a lot of equipment that could be donated, encouraging companies and bigger organisations to donate their unwanted or unused kit can be a great way to get stuff. There's a lot of equipment that's only a year or two, maybe 3 years old. It's still perfectly usable, can still be updated and do everything people need it to, that's sat in storerooms because it's been deemed to be too old and been replaced. So yeah, there's some stuff happening around this, but I think it's an area that we could all probably do a bit more about, or put more into. The Reboot project by Nominet is a national project which has created an online toolkit. That toolkit helps any organisation to set up their own equipment and connectivity scheme. So if you're interested in that, I will put a link into the chat, and as I say, these slides will go out. But that literally has a step-by-step toolkit that allows you to look at how you as an organisation or a group of organisations could set up your own scheme to provide equipment and connectivity to people in the community. Another idea around connectivity, which we've been looking at, is Operation Wi-Fi. And this is an alliance of 100 civil society organisations from across the sectors. And they're campaigning really for kind of 3 key things, which are to ensure that those on lowest incomes can get access to data, that no person is left without a device in order to access the internet, and no one's left behind due to the lack of skills or how they use their device. So they're looking for organisations to get behind this kind of this campaign and pledge with them in the hope that they can drive up internet inclusivity. And one of the key points in how they're going to do that is they would like to create a citizen SIM. So this will be a SIM card where those of us who have got plenty of mobile data and maybe don't use all our 4G or 5G data can donate this unused data that's left over each month to a data bank, and that can then be issued to people on low incomes or those who are unable to afford data on prepaid SIM cards. Personally, I think this is a great idea. I often have rollover data from my mobile provider, and they text me saying you've got this much data rolled over, and I never use it. So I'm essentially paying for data that's not being used. Optus in Australia ran this, and I was looking at some of the stats yesterday, and they've given massive amounts of data away. And as Citizen SIM mentioned here in the notes, a usage poll showed them that there were 650 million gigabytes of unused data in June this year. That's just 1 month. And that equates to 400 hours online browsing for 5 million people who are currently disconnected. So this could really be a solution to how we solve the connectivity issue, the data issue, because the data is already out there. So moving on, I'm not going to go through all these points, but our third kind of point is around confidence and skills. Training schemes are the answer to help people learn the skills that they need to get online and to be online. There's a lot of research, and I'm sure Heather backs this up, showing that training schemes are most effective when they're delivered locally in familiar settings. So again, local vulnerable sector organisations getting behind this could make a real difference. I think it's important not to think that this is just an old people's problem. It's sometimes an assumption that's made. We've had feedback throughout the lockdown from Talent Match, our partner, who work with a lot of young people, and they're struggling to get online too, both in terms of their connectivity, but also the skills and confidence. So it's not just solely an age thing. Wolverhampton Libraries have begun a digital volunteering scheme where their volunteers who helped in libraries are moving to do some of the online work. And at WVSC, we're currently setting up an IT Buddies volunteering project within our volunteer centre, which is basically going to provide hopefully a pool of digital volunteers that can support people that want to get online and may need that extra help. As Josie mentioned, it's incredibly intensive teaching people these skills. So the more volunteers we can gather to assist the organisations who are delivering this type of training, I think the better, because yeah, it's pretty time intensive. So just to finish up, we've got lots of organisations and groups around the city working in digital inclusion. How do we find out who they are and where they are? Hopefully Catherine's Digital Wolves website is going to help us do that, because that's somewhere we can start compiling all that information. I saw a scheme mentioned in Toronto actually, where people who volunteer were given internet data, 4G data, as a reward for volunteering. I know sometimes people have reservations about giving volunteers financial rewards, because that's not really why you should be volunteering, but that could be a way to encourage people to get online and enable them to get online. If they do a certain amount of hours volunteering somewhere, they're getting a certain amount of mobile data. And as we've already talked about partnership working, I think, is there an interest with a combined approach or campaign across the sector in Wolverhampton? I think the answer probably is yes to that. It'd be great to hear people's thoughts on that as we go forwards today.